Hello everybody, welcome. Today I'm going to show you the first part on how to run Shellinabox through your Nextcloud installation on a FreeBSD jail. In that case, or in my case, a FreeNAS jail. When you are done, it's going to look like this. Or almost done, because I'm still missing dual factor authentication and missing disable root and create an account for that. So basically, when you open, in my case here, I created this icon BSD and I put the BSD icon there. If you're interested, I can show you how to do that as well. You click, it's gonna go through Shellinabox. The connection is going, if you click the lock here, the cert is valid. And when you log in, you have access to this special jail that I created, just act as a terminal. And then from here, I can do whatever I want. So to begin with, you just follow the normal jail creation process, right? It can get the IP automatically, and there are plenty of instructions everywhere on how to do that. So I'm going to skip it. So what I did here is created this terminal jail that's getting the IP automatically. And if I go here, I can click, launch the shell. And the basic installation is done only by using, getting the package from the ports and, installing it. Yeah, the instructions are going to be down there rolling somewhere. Once you're done installing, we're going to modify the configuration. So what I did here was, you open on VI, or if you want to install some other text editor, you can. I prefer to clip my installation link, so I use plain VI without any new facilities. You go to user local etc rc.d and shellinabox.d, and that's the script that launches Shellinabox as a service. And then the changes that you're going to have to do, if you scroll down to the line common arguments, first thing is disable SSL, because Shellinabox comes by default with SSL enabled, and it's going to try to get the certificate from this directory here, right? But since I'm using the same cert, a wildcard cert for my different services, I'm going to get this proxied through. I'm disabling SSL, then the user on which is running its Shellinabox, creating this group is user, and the group is part of the installation, so you don't have to worry about it. Since we're going to proxy this, we don't have to worry about the port as well, right? Because we're going to come through the internet on port 443. The important thing is here to add the option SSH, because later on we are going to use dual factor authentication, right? And you don't want to be logging into directly a local, like if you do be a local console, right? You want to go through SSH. So you add the option here. Then you run the service, and that's all good. Now, as I mentioned, I want everything coming through my Nextcloud installation, right? Of course, if you know the path of the application, you can just type in the URL, but I'd rather have my users log into their accounts and clicking the BSD icon. So I'm going to show you how to do this here. Now I'm assuming that you have your Apache server configured and the cert is there, right? So you have to do, first, we can leave this and go to our web server, and that's this jail down here. You go to the shell, and I'm gonna open the Apache configuration. So I'm going to user local etc Apache 24 includes, and then I have I'm gonna blur this out because it includes the URL of my server. But if you go to the configuration, what I did was, I'm gonna have to blur a lot of things. It's gonna be a pain to edit. But anyway, The important thing is I have both options here, right? So the first one is I can go through port 80. Then you have your server running, the path of the installation, in that case it's on Nextcloud. And then what I did was I created a location, and this location sends everything to the Shellinabox host, and that is the IP of the Shellinabox and its port. I'm using HTTP, as you can see here, because I disabled SSL, and 8181 is the port that I have configured over there. And that's all you need. So once the web server is running, if I go to this URL and I type my URL slash, in that case, Concha, I'm gonna get to Shellinabox. And since I have the cert configured in this web server, it's gonna pass the cert through. Now, you can see here that I have this running on port 80, right? So where this is coming from? Basically, you have two options. I'm running HAProxy, but you can also pass the traffic through to Apache and run it on 443. And that is actually configured down here, so I can switch easily between SSL termination on the proxy or SSL termination on the web server as I want. If you scroll down, I have here port 443, right? And then you have my cert, configured, all good. And if you scroll down, you're gonna see that I have created the location for that forwards the traffic to Shellinabox. So that's what you have to do. If you have SSL configured properly, then the certificate is going to be attached, right? So that is another part here. So you could have your cert applied to Shellinabox and change Shellinabox to port 443, but then that's all you would have online, right? I doubt you will have many connections, a different provider and one only to run Shellinabox, yeah. So this is the configuration if you're on port 443 going through having the traffic straight to the web server and having SSL termination there on Apache. Now, we need to check the Nextcloud configuration, right? So what you do here is you have to log in as admin, so I'm logging out. You go to settings, then you go to external sites, and the URL here has to be added, with the path you set in your proxy pointing to Shellinabox. And you can pick up a nice icon. In that case, I created the icon for FreeBSD and I uploaded it here. So as you can see, I have a cool icon, and the same thing is, for example, with the torrents here, yeah. And I can see a web browser remotely as well if I wish. So that's set here. Now let's have a look on the proxy configuration. So I'm running this on an Android board, and for the amount of traffic I have is perfectly fine. The cooler only kicks in when it's booting up or upgrading, but in normal use it never turns on. And it's good because the cooler is very loud and annoying. So now I have two configuration options done here. The first one is with the termination in the proxy, and that's what I'm using now because I'm running Rancher and I couldn't get it to work through Apache, like two proxies. So if we go here and check my configuration now, the running configuration is the one that covers direct traffic, with SSL termination here in the proxy. Yeah. So the beginning here, I have just a log configuration. Also have a remote syslog server configured, and what folder is hosting certs, what certs I'm accepting, and then here I have some basic options that you're gonna need to use. HTTP mode, it means that HAProxy is doing the whole job, is actually scanning the HTTP traffic and applying configuration based on that. When you're running on TCP mode, the options are more limited on how you can manipulate this traffic, right? Then I've come to this configuration after running HAProxy for 3 or 4 years. What works best for me. If you're interested, I can make a video only on HAProxy, but for now, this is what I have, yeah. Important here, the first front end is called HTTP in, and as you can see, it's on mode HTTP. It's binding on port 80, and port 443, it's adding the certificate, yeah, so it's attaching the certificate to it. And then here I have more configuration, right? So I am blocking all sources from this IP. I don't even remember why I'm blocking this whole subnet, but I think when I looked into my router logs, there were a lot of access requests from this network, and there is no reason, right? So I'm blocking it right away. Then here I have a table that, basically I'm trying to avoid flood, and misformed packages. I can go through the options later if you're interested. Then down here I have some redirects specific for my environment because I have multiple servers and hosts being behind this connection, so that is all done here. But what matters for us is HAProxy is being proxied behind my Apache server, right? So all requests with this host header, they are going to the back end that is called Nextcloud, and that's the one that is running on FreeNAS. And if you see here, I'm adding HTTPS here just in case, and then it goes to the jail running in the FreeNAS box with this IP address, and I'm on port 80 accepting 100 connections. And this is enough to run Shellinabox with SSL termination on HAProxy. So going through HAProxy, Apache, and then landing on Shellinabox. Now, before I installed Rancher, I was actually terminating the certs on port 443 in Apache, right? And HAProxy was not doing much. So the configuration initially is the same, besides special options here. So the options are a bit different, yeah. And if we scroll down, we have the same configuration here to avoid abuse, the same ACL, blocking things. I'm redirecting HTTP request to HTTPS in this area. But if you look down, there's a front-end HTTPS on mode TCP, which means that HAProxy is not doing any manipulation on the, on the data level, right? So what it's doing is, the only thing I do is check the request of the SSL cert. So whatever, based on the certificate that the client is expecting, then I forward it to the correct server, right? And we have here our Nextcloud installation. So if we scroll to the backend Nextcloud, then you can see I'm using mode TCP, and I'm making sure that I don't touch this traffic, otherwise you get SSL errors. And then I send to the same server behind on port 443. And the way my setup is, I have SSL termination configured both on the proxy. I just need to switch the configuration file and restart the service. On Apache is actually running all the time, so I can do the changes only in the proxy, and the traffic goes through fine to Apache either on port 80 or 443. And that does the job, right? So if you want a more detailed walkthrough, let me know in the comments. And on the next video, I'm going to show the configuration with dual factor authentication for Shellinabox. Otherwise, it's quite insecure, yeah? Which means that now that this video is public, I'm going to probably work on this today or tomorrow to not have any problems. Or I can just turn off the Shellinabox machine until tomorrow, but that's how it goes. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you in the next video.